What does the sun represent? The sun represents your ego. What was it in this lifetime that your soul wanted to be, wanted to express itself, how it wanted to express itself? That is your sun sign. Welcome to the Spirit and Spice podcast. I'm your host, Jen Carroll. This is a space for mindfulness, spirituality, and intentional living, with conversations and practices to help you feel more connected to yourself and your path. In astrology, everyone has a chart that is called their birth chart or their natal chart, Natal. And this represents basically your blueprint, a map in which to better understand yourself. So to create your natal chart, your birth chart, you can go on to several different websites and enter in the information. And the information that they're looking for is your birthday, the date, the time in which you were born, as well as the place that you were born. And what that does is by giving the coordinates in which you were born, the time in which you were born, and the day that you were born, it takes everything that was in our sky, in our galaxy, and it flattens it onto a piece of paper. And that lets you see where the sun was, what sign, the planets were in, what signs the houses were in, and it creates this beautiful map for us to use to better understand ourselves. Astrology is all about recognizing the patterns of the energy that goes along with different aspects and transits of the planets and the energy that the houses and the signs represent. So, you've probably, I am sure, had someone ask you, or you even yourself ask someone, hey, what's your sign? And they say, oh, I'm an Aries or a Leo or Pisces or whatever it may be. Well, that is their sun sign. So you're asking them, oh, what's your sun sign? It's another term. It's an older term, but it's like, oh, what's your star sign? And that all represents the date of which you were born and where the sun was in the sky. So I'm going to talk about just a quick way for you to get a real good feel about your natal chart, because there's so much that goes along with it. There's so many layers. I've been studying astrology since I was a teenager, and literally I am still learning every single day. So I'm going to start out with the luminaries. And so the luminaries are your sun and your moon. And then I'm going to go through your inner planets as well as your rising sign and a couple other points that I think are super important. So we know what the sun sign is. That's the day in which you were born, the specific day. What does the sun represent? The sun represents your ego. What was it in this lifetime that your soul wanted to be, wanted to express itself, how it wanted to express itself? That is your sun sign. So your sun is how your soul expresses itself. It is your ego. Your moon sign, where your moon is, and she is the other luminary. Even though the moon doesn't itself shine, she reflects the light of the sun. So if our sun is reflecting outwards, and that is our ego reflecting out into our environment, then that internal reflection is going to be our moon. And so that is how we internalize things, how we decipher our emotions, and the lens in which we view the world. So our moon is like our internal aspects of self. And then our rising sign is not a planet, but it is an angle. It is a mathematical point within our chart that is our first house. And I'll get into the houses too. But our rising sign is also known as our ascendant. And that is the mask that we wear while we're out in the world. Our rising sign is how we present ourselves to the public. These are some things that these are characteristics that we came into this lifetime predispositioned to know. And then whenever we saw those specific characteristics play out while we were in early childhood, and we recognized what was socially acceptable within our environment, that's what we clung on to. And that goes with our rising sign. Then, so we have our ego, we have how we view the world, how the world sees us, and then how our ego wants to be expressed. So from those three signs, then we move on to Venus, Mercury, and Mars. So we'll start with Mars. Mars is the god of war. He's the planet of war. And that gets a bad rap. But if you think about war, war is all about passion. If you're extremely passionate about something, you will go to war for it. So Mars represents what we're passionate about, what we fight for, how we fight, and it also represents sex and our sexuality. Venus, on the other hand, represents our sensuality. She represents how we love others, how we show our self-love, and really like what we value in life. If you think about the Venusian qualities, specifically of a Taurus, a stereotypical Taurus loves luxury, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. When you think about mythological, like Venus, the mythology that goes along with Venus, she was a goddess all of love. It's how you spoil yourself, how you spoil others, or how you don't, and how you have, if you have a hard aspect in your chart with Venus, and you feel shame around self-love, that all shows up in your chart, and it's extremely fascinating. Okay, so we have Mars, Venus, what you're passionate about, what you value, how you love, how you want to be loved. And then we have Mercury. And Mercury is all about communication. In mythology, he is Hermes. Hermes was the messenger between Hades and Mount Olympus. And so he was the in-between, constantly relaying messages back and forth. So he represents communication. And not only communication, but of how you communicate to others, but how you best understand others and how they communicate to you, as well as education, how you learn. Okay, so we have the inner planets and our first angle, our ascendant/rising sign. Then two other points that I like to look at within our natal chart are the Chiron, and which Chiron is an asteroid, as well as the North Node. So every planet is and every sign is steeped in mythology, Greek and Roman mythology. So Chiron was the wounded healer. He represents our childhood wound, or what wound we came into this lifetime carrying. And so through that wound, we are then able to heal ourselves, just like the mythology of Chiron, where he was a god or a demigod, and he was struck with this poisoned arrow. And since he was a god, he didn't die, but he had this festering wound that just would not heal. And within he learned finally how to heal himself, was through healing others. And so that is what Chiron represents. It represents our deep wound that we need to focus on healing this lifetime. And by healing it, we can help others. And even if it's not others within our physical reality, us healing that wound then heals that wound throughout our lineage. You hear of like ancestral trauma, and that is something that can 100% be expressed through Chiron. And then the last point is your north node. Your north node represents your North Star. That is the point where your soul wants to go to in this lifetime. It wants to achieve whatever that is. Before you came down on this earth, your soul was like, you know what? I really want to do X, Y, Z. And if you follow your North Star, that will lead you on your path. And it's super uncomfortable because we're not familiar with it. It's something that we've never done before. And so a lot of the times that is a pattern that repeats, of where we're just uneasy and it, like, we're supposed to jump, but we don't know how to jump, and it makes us feel uncomfortable. But then when we do, it's so rewarding. In the same aspect, as you have your north node, you also have your south node. And your south node is what you come into this lifetime already knowing. So I believe in past lives. And so I believe that this is information that you've collected throughout your lives, and your soul has achieved. If you don't believe in past lives, it's what your soul came into this lifetime knowing. It's what your soul was gifted with. And so your north node is what you're super comfortable with. That is what you're really good at. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in order to grow, sometimes there's patterns that we have to let go of if they're no longer serving us within this lifetime. Okay, so that is a really quick way to get a great snapshot of your chart and to understand yourself a lot better in a very short amount of time. Okay, and then let's explain the houses, the 12 different houses as well as 12 different signs. So even though you say, oh, I'm an Aries or whatever it may be, that's your sun sign, you actually have the energy of all of the signs within your chart, just as you have all of the planets. And we also have 12 houses. So I like to think of it as, let's do 2 pizzas. So we have both pizzas are cut into 12 slices. And you have one pizza that has 12 slices, and those represent your 12 different houses. Then you have your other pizza that has 12 slices, and this represents the 12 different astrological signs. Now, depending on when you were born, where you were born, and what time you were born, those are going to rotate on each other to get to the point of where they are exactly where they're supposed to be. But so those 2 pizzas then lay down on top of one another. And then you have all of these toppings, and these toppings are our planets and our asteroids and our mathematical points that we're going to sprinkle on our pizzas. And that represents your natal chart. And I do the food analogy because it makes sense in my brain and because I really, really like food. So let's go through the houses. Now, your planets those are little your planets are little flavor enhancers. And so they can taste really good or they can taste really crappy depending on where they are on your pizza and what house they fall in. They can be in their glory or they can be in their detriment. And again, astrology and natal charts, they go so deep. But I'm going to try to stay as surface level as I can. So let's go through the 12 houses and what it represents. So your first house is your house of self. That is the angle in which your rising sign or your ascendant starts. So your first house is your house of self. That's not only how you physically look, but that is your outer appearance, how you feel. Again, that's your mask that you wear in the environment around you. And then your second house is the house of money and possessions. So this house represents what you value, how you make your money, if money comes easy to you or if it doesn't, and how you value money. Are you a minimalist? Are you a maximalist? All of that can be found within your second house. Your third house is the house of communication. And so if we think of the first 6 houses are the first 6 houses of self, and then the 6 outer houses, those are the houses of you in the world around you. The houses, I don't want to say the houses of others, but it's the houses of you with others. So our third house is communication. This can also represent siblings and neighbors and short journeys, but really on a basic level, this is the house of communication, of talking and writing and early childhood education. Our fourth house is our house of home. This is what type of environment did we have and do we seek? What feels like home for us? Then our fifth house is our house of joy and creativity. It's our house of passion. It's our house of children. Fifth house is all about self-expression. And it can also include hobbies as well. Then our sixth house is our house of daily routines, our house of service. So this also represents our health. So we also call it the house of work, but it's more of our service related work. What are our day-to-day tasks in which we do things? And again, our health, that's our sixth house. So then our seventh house is our first house of us and others. Our seventh house is our house of relationships. This is our house of partnerships, of legal relationships or partnerships, I should say, as well as marriage. And then the eighth house is one of the spooky houses. It's I would say there's probably 2 haunted houses within the houses of astrology, and that's our 8th house and our 12th house. And again, that's fearing the unknown, which coincidentally, our 8th house is the house of fear. It is the house of power and transformation. It's also the house of sex and magic and other people's money. Um, and like taxes. It can be the house of taboo, things that we shouldn't talk about or we don't talk about. Um, and so eighth house energy is interesting. And then our ninth house is our house of belief. It's our house of wisdom and spirituality. What core beliefs do you hold on to? It also represents higher education and foreign travel. Our 10th house represents our career as well as our public reputation. This house is represents our legacy. What are we leaving behind within this lifetime? Then our 11th house is our house of community and friendships. It can also represent clubs that we're a part of, but truly like community and friendships. And then our 12th house, our last house, is the house of undoing. Which again, it gets a bad rap, but it's all of the unseen. It's the behind the scenes. If the first house is our outer self, our 12th house is our inner self. It is everything that is all within our head and in our mind. It's the behind the scenes, the self undoing, the repressions. They call it the house of sorrow and self undoing. It can also represent like institutions. And so, but really how I like to think of it is it's our psyche. It's all of the things that help us process the world and how we process it internally. So that is a quick synopsis of your birth chart. And again, it goes through so many layers. And of course, we didn't touch any of the signs. So if you go to Google or any of the search engines and you type in free natal birth chart or free birth chart, free natal chart, whatever it is that you want to type in, and then you add your information in, and it will spit out this little diagram of this wheel, and it will come jam-packed full of information, which will seem so confusing, but hopefully not as confusing since you have listened and watched this video / podcast. So I hope you have a fantastic day. And if this is something that you guys like, I will gladly go more in depth, I should say, about any of these aspects. So just let me know. All right. Bye.